o'clock in Johannesburg by the Progressive Business Forum, aimed at unpacking the NHI Act and the future of healthcare in the country. Mutwaledi says costs will only be determined in stages.
Even UK in 1948, if you go to them and ask them, in 1948, how much was their NHI going to cost? Nobody will know. Because things change. If we give you a figure now and next year there's another epidemic bigger than Ebola, and we said, no, for healthcare we need this much, and then Ebola comes in or another epidemic bigger, how do you then respond to that? So you implement in phases at a particular period of time, depending on how much money you have got at that particular time.
The family of the murdered 30-year-old South African lady, Olerato Mongale, says it is relieved that justice for Olerato has been served even before she is buried. This follows the death of the main suspect in Olerato's case, Philangenkosi Makhanya, in a shootout with police this morning in Amazimtoti, south of Durban, in the KwaZulu-Natal province. The body was discovered on Sunday in Lombardy, north of Johannesburg, about 2 hours after she was reported missing, having gone on a date. Olerato will be buried in her hometown in Bloemfontein this week. And Griselda Kananda is the family's spokesperson.
It is quite a relief for the family that justice for Olerato, before we even lay her body to rest, would have been served. The unfortunate reality is each time they create an environment where they're not able to answer the questions that the nation has. Why choose this particular way of ending young lives, and why target young women? Because it seems like it's a syndicate, and oftentimes when there's a syndicate, there is a source.
At least 21 people have been killed in north-central Nigeria when their homes were destroyed by heavy rains and nearly a dozen were missing. Head of the Niger State Emergency Management Agency, Ibrahim Hussaini, says 50 houses were submerged in water in 2 communities in the state yesterday. Nigeria is prone to flooding during the rainy season, which began in April. Lastly, officials in Mexico say 5 music band members whose bodies have been found following their disappearance at the weekend were murdered by drug traffickers. Investigators said the 9 suspects were arrested and were all members of a drug-dealing cartel. The BBC's Will Grant.
Relatives of the 5 members of the band Grupo Fugitivo say they'd been booked for a gig on Sunday night in the violent city of Reynosa in the northern state of Tamaulipas. Initial investigations suggest that when they arrived at the supposed event, they found an empty car park. Their families haven't heard from them since, and after some relatives received ransom demands, they raised the alarm with the authorities. The Attorney General's office in the state has now confirmed that 5 bodies later found at a different location in Reynosa were those of the missing musicians and that they had been murdered.
Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, Bruno Fernandes considering quitting Man United for Al Hilal, while Red Bull's Max Verstappen says his championship battle against the McLaren drivers this season doesn't really feel like a fight. I'll tell you details of these and other stories at 12:30.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
Well, thank you to Onele Nzinzi with our news update and Msibudi Makura with the sports headlines. It is 12:06 Central African Time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa on Channel Africa Radio from an African perspective. We are on DSTV's audio bouquet channel 802, on OpenView channel 628, and on www.channelafrica.co.za, as well as on the SABC Plus app, available on the Apple and Google Play stores. And you can join us in conversation on our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram, and subscribe on YouTube at Channel Africa 1. On Facebook at Channel Africa, you can also send us your comments and voice notes to +2763 at 406-9126. Hashtag Africa Updates, and let us know which country you're in. And if you have any stories that you'd like us to highlight or to focus on, send us an email. It is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or give us a call on +27 11 714 4459. And today on #Africa Updates, Islamic State has claimed responsibility for an attack in northern Mozambique in which 10 soldiers were killed. We're asking you today, what can countries do to ensure the safety of its citizens against insurgents? Share your thoughts on Channel Africa's social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram, at Channel Africa 1, on Facebook at Channel Africa. You can also send us your comments and voice notes to +2763 as 406 at 9126. That is, what can countries do to ensure the safety of its citizens against insurgents? That is on #Africa Update Asks.
Africa Update on Channel Africa.
It is 12:08 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. Now, 21 people have been confirmed dead following a flood disaster that ravaged Tifin Maza and Anguwan Hausawa communities in Mokwa town of Mukwa local government area of Niger State in Nigeria. The flood disaster also resulted in widespread destruction of property apart from human casualties. Tutongobeni has more.
The Director General of the Niger State Emergency Management Agency, NSEMA, Abdullahi Baba Ara, has confirmed that 21 people lost their lives while 10 more people were still missing due to the heavy rains that battered the sleepy town of Mokwa in Niger State. NSEMA is in receipt of a report of a deadly flood disaster that ravaged two communities of Tifin Maza and Anguhan Hauswan in Mokwa town of Mokwa local government area, LGA. The incident occurred on Thursday night during torrential rains of very high intensity that lasted several hours, with surging flood waters submerging and washing away over 50 residential houses along with their occupants. In response to these tragic events, the agency, in collaboration with the Mokwa LGA authorities, divers and very brave volunteers, conducted a search and rescue operation to rescue survivors and recover corpses. 3 survivors, a woman and 2 children, were reported to have received treatment for wounds and shock at the Mokwa General Hospital, while 21 corpses have so far been recovered, with over 10 people still missing. Meanwhile, the search and rescue still continues. For Channel Africa News, I am Tutongobene in Johannesburg.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo on Channel Africa.
There are reports that 10 soldiers have been killed when fighters attacked a military camp in northern Mozambique. Islamic State has claimed that they were responsible for the attack. And for more on this, we are joined on the line by our correspondent in Mozambique. That's Milton Maluleke. Milton, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Good afternoon, Lulu. Good afternoon, and noon to Channel Africa listeners.
Now, Milton, what can you tell us about this attack?
Well, the army base near Makomia district in Cabo Delgado came under attack on Tuesday by Islamic insurgents. Mozambican military also confirmed this information. We know that the Islamic State, even they claim this attack via their communication channels. And they said that they have killed these 10 government soldiers, but for the first time we had the confirmation, official confirmation from the government, because we know that this group, most of the time, they exaggerate the numbers, especially when they engage with the government in this kind of attacks. And because we know that early this month also they claimed same attack saying that they killed 11 soldiers in Cabo Delgado. But the security, no one actually from the government confirmed this attack. So those are the information that I can provide right now regarding to this attack.
Now, there have been continued attacks. How frequent are these attacks, and in what parts of Mozambique are they occurring? And what's the biggest fight that is now underway in Mozambique in all these attacks that are taking place?
Well, when it comes to these kind of attacks or even the retaliation, even the operations from the government, we don't have that much information coming out because most of the time they say that they can't provide this information because if they update, they can end up also updating the insurgents of their operations. What I can tell now is that this attack also, we had recently same attack because it's happening monthly basis, but we are not getting this kind of information coming out. 3 Rwandan soldiers, for example, they were killed in another area, and the 2 rangers also they were slaughtered in a game reserve in neighboring Nyasa province, which means that it's not only in Cabo Delgado that the insurgents are hitting right now. They even managed to cross to the next province that they share the border with Tanzania. So their operation nowadays is actually they spread out. They don't have that much casualties, but for change, now they are not going after civilians. It's like they are after soldiers because it's what we are having right now.
And what sort of response or reaction are you hearing of from government and the peacekeepers who are on the ground? All right, we seem to have lost that connection to our correspondent in Mozambique, that's Milton Maluleke, unpacking the story with regards to the 10 soldiers who have been killed when they were attacked by a military camp in northern Mozambique. And it has come out that Islamic State has claimed responsibility for this particular attack. We're hoping to speak to Milton and just find out what government's response is to these attacks and what the peacekeepers on the ground are also saying with regards to their presence and the continued attacks that are taking place. That was our correspondent in Mozambique, Milton Maluleke, joining us on the line.
Você é fluente em português? É apaixonado por rádio e quer trabalhar na África do Sul? Você tem documentos que o qualificam para trabalhar na África do Sul? Nesse caso, podemos ter uma oportunidade para você trabalhar no Canal África. Envie seu currículo e demonstração para Canal África at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Lembre-se, se você não receber alguma resposta nossa em 14 dias, isso significa que você não foi selecionado. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
It is 15 after 12 Central African Time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. Milton is back on the line with us as our correspondent in Mozambique. Milton, I was trying to find out from you what government's reaction or response is with regards to this particular attack and what the peacekeepers on the ground are saying.
Well, as I said, we only had the reaction or the confirmation about this attack, but the government is always saying that they are doing everything in their power, all the means actually to fight back the insurgency in Cabo Delgado. And the experts or other sources, international ones, up to now, they didn't say anything. We are actually expecting to hear from Rwanda because Rwanda also suffered the same fate or same attack a month ago, where they had their 3 soldiers actually being killed and the other rangers from the reserve camp in Nyasa also being gunned down by the insurgents. So to say that it is not only Cabo Delgado that is being hit, that is having this kind of problem now. It seems like the insurgents are spreading out from Cabo Delgado because they don't have their strongholds, the base that they used to have. Now, actually, what they do is actually to speed out, going actually in the other fronts or other places to hit and run. I can say that.
Now, Milton, as much as these insurgents are saying that their target is not civilians, but there will always be civilian casualty. What is the reaction from the Mozambicans on the ground?
Well, they are, because most of the time they attack and they go after civilians. But now their main target seems like it is a base, because they actually want to regain the control, and they know that it's not going after the civilians. It's actually going after the government or the soldiers actually that are there, knowing that SADC, for example, they are not longer there. They have in mind that there are only Mozambican and Rwandan soldiers in action in Cabo Delgado. So they want to regain the power. Regaining the power is to attack the strong ones. So the strong ones for them is the government. Or
Milton, thank you so much for joining us on Africa Updates. Let's leave it there for today.
Thank you, Lulu. Have a good one.
Thank you, Milton, and to you too. That's our correspondent in Mozambique, Milton Maluleke, joining us on the line.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo on Channel Africa.
It is 18 after 12 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. Some opposition lawmakers in Ghana boycotted Parliament yesterday, protesting against the detention of a senior leader facing an investigation into financial irregularities. The new Patriotic Party chairman in the party's political stronghold of Ashanti region, Bernard Antwi Boisiako, has been in custody at the Economic and Organized Crime Office in Accra since Tuesday. And for more on this, we are joined on the line by our correspondent in Ghana, Eric Mawena Egbeta. Eric, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Good afternoon, Lulu. A pleasure to speak to you as always.
Eric, seemingly there's a lot happening on the ground. And now, the other day, it was a scam, a fraud scam in the U.S. at the Ghana embassy, and now investigations underway where a senior leader of the opposition basically under arrest. What's happening there?
Well, Lulu, the last time we spoke, I mentioned what this pledge of this new administration was. They vociferously made it quite clear that when they ever get the chance to return to office again, they were going to pursue all individuals they believed had looted state coffers, amongst many other things. It's one thing that the average Ghanaian has been looking forward to. They call it the Operation Recover All Loots, just short as oral. And that's one of the many promises that a lot of Ghanaians have looked forward to. And so for a lot of people, it comes as little surprise, this course of action which has been taken. But yes, a senior member of the opposition party was picked up on Tuesday after he had initially reported to the police CID, because the police CID as well had invited him for questioning. They had granted him bail, and he was supposed to return on the Tuesday at 3 p.m. He did make a return there. And let me just clarify that the police CID's invitation to him had to do with his mining company, that's Bernard Antwi Boisiako, his mining company engaged in illegal mining activities. That has been on quite some record. Even during the time his government was in power, there were investigations which revealed that his mining company was involved in serious devastation of the country's forest reserve. And so when power changed hands, the police CID invited him, and that's when questioning was happening on the Tuesday. After that questioning, he was on his way back home. That's when the Economic and Organized Crime Office as well intercepted him and took him into custody. Investigation started. We got wind that he suddenly took ill while the investigations were ongoing and was taken to a hospital facility owned by the National Investigations Bureau. And then party supporters began to mass up at the head office of the Economic and Organized Crime Office, and there's been pressure piled on them to have him released, but they've not budged at all. They say that they are investigating him for alleged money laundering and then causing financial loss to the state to the tune of some $50 million as well. And then yesterday, while the legislature was sitting, the leadership there said that they were abandoning sitting in Parliament and marching to the head office of IOCO, which is the Economic and Organized Crime Office, to demand that he be released. They first off make the argument that he's been granted a bail of 50 million Ghana cedis with 2 sureties to be verified. And they argue strongly that that bail sum is quite too high, because as at the time he was granted bail, it's been 48 hours and he's not been able to get these sureties to stand in for him so that he can walk out of Yoko's office and investigations will continue. And so yesterday, they made their way there, sat on the floor at some point in time, and were questioning why the Economic and Organized Crime Office will not vary the bail terms and allow him leave their premises and then return on any subsequent date when they may require him. And so that's the crux of the argument. But yesterday as well, we got the Deputy Attorney General, Dr. Justice Sremsai, come up officially to explain the reasons why he continues to be held and the charges upon which he's been investigated: money laundering, causing financial loss to the state, and amongst many other things, taking some loans from financial houses, some of which have not been paid, the Ghana Exim Bank as an example. And all of these have made him a subject of investigation under the government much touted policy of Operation Recover or Loot, where they say they will go after all persons who've looted from the state and have them return the money, Lulu.
Now, Eric, questions are now being raised regarding President Mahama's anti-corruption drive. And obviously, with more, what they're saying is that there are going to be more arrests as investigations continue. So a lot of people are probably under investigation and are not even aware of it.
Absolutely. In fact, there was a running joke yesterday that when the legislators were on their way, a member of Parliament's attention was drawn to the fact that they are also under investigations by Yoko, and so perhaps it will be a good idea for them not to be present at the head office where they possibly could be picked up, because we know there are investigations into the All Africa Games which were held in the country where millions of US dollars were expended without true value being delivered during that tournament. There's the National Service Scheme ghost name scandal as well, and so a host of other investigations. We know as well that the former Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta is under investigation, and the expectation is that a lot more of such investigations will lead to many more of such arrests. And so those in government say that, well, if the leadership in Parliament wants to be staging walks to various investigative bodies, then they should prepare to be doing a lot more of such, because there are investigations currently underway by different state organizations who are looking into different corruption scandals which came up under the previous administration, which weren't investigated. And this government say they are going to investigate it to the last and ensure that all such state coffers which were looted, all such monies which went into wrong hands are brought back into the coffers of the state and used for development.
Oh, Erica, and also before I let you go, with regards to the U.S. Embassy, is it operating? I saw a headline where it stated that it was back in operation. Give us an update on what's happening on that front.
Absolutely. It started operations yesterday. That's the address by the Foreign Affairs Minister Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa. After he said that it was temporarily going to be closed down, they subsequently sent a team of IT professionals to the Washington Embassy to reverse all of the damage that had been done on the website, which was redirecting applicants onto a private website. There's a team of senior diplomats as well who were also sent to the US, who are expected to kickstart operations for all of such services which is rendered there continue. On the front of investigations, yet again, there's been a little of a quiet as to when the work of the Attorney General is going to start with regard that particular investigation and then prosecution of persons. But we can report now that the Washington Embassy of Ghana in the United States is back operational, and they are expected that from time to time, the team of suspended individuals who are being investigated, as and when they are cleared, will make a return, and then there will be replacement as the embassy begins operations from yesterday as well, Lulu.
Eric, always a pleasure chatting to you. Thank you so much for joining us on Africa Update.
As always, a pleasure, Lulu.
That's our correspondent in Ghana, Eric Mawena Egbeta, joining us on the line. It is 28 after 12 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa.
Je, una jambo lolote akilini mwako? Je, una shauku kuhusu masuala muhimu? Na je, una maoni ambayo unataka yasikike? Kweli, hili jukwaa ni la kwako. Piga simu au tuandikie kwenda WhatsApp namba alama ya kujumulisha 2760552594 na tutakupigia simu.
Mtangazaji wa habari zetu za Afrika Kusini mjini Johannesburg.
Hivyo unaweza kuwa mshirika kwenye matangazo yetu. Sio mazungumzo tu, ni fursa yako ya kuchangia maoni yako na kushirikiana na jumuiya ya wasikilizaji wanaotamani mtazamo wako. Tufuate kwenye mitandao ya kijamii. Tembelea tovuti yetu www.channelafrica.co.za na uwe tayari kushiriki na kuchangia maoni yako kwenye Channel Africa. Channel Africa, mtazamo wa Kiafrika.
Africa Update on Channel Africa.
Today on hashtag Africa Update Ask, we focus on the Islamic State having claimed responsibility for an attack in northern Mozambique in which 10 soldiers were killed. Now, we ask you, what can countries do to ensure the safety of their citizens against insurgents? Share your thoughts or your views on our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram, and at Channel Africa 1 on Facebook, at Channel Africa. You can also send us your voice notes or messages on +27 63 406. That's 9126. We're asking, what can countries do to ensure the safety of their citizens against insurgents? Hashtag Africa Update Us. Join us in conversation.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Looking at your headlines this hour, some opposition lawmakers in Ghana boycotted Parliament yesterday, protesting against the detention of a senior leader facing an investigation into financial irregularities. 21 people have been confirmed dead following a flood disaster that ravaged communities in Niger State in Nigeria. The flood disaster also resulted in widespread destruction of property, apart from human casualties. And 4 more people in Hong Kong under China's national security law have been released after more than 4 years in prison. They are the second group of activists accused of subversion to be released this month. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Tsinsi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Well, thank you, Onele, for that update. We say good afternoon to Msibudi Makura with our sports news.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Lulu. We'll start here. So the South African Sports Confederation and Olympic Committee, SASCOC, is now considering a request from the Commonwealth Federation to host the 2030 Games. Now, the future of this global showpiece is in doubt, but the change in the structure of the Games might also make it financially more viable for countries to host it. So at a presentation outlining SASCOC's vision for the future of South African sport, hosting the Commonwealth Games as well as expressing interest in hosting the 2036 Games were discussed. SASCOC President Barry Hendricks says they are showing interest once again in hosting the Commonwealth Games.
The fundamental format of the Commonwealth Games has changed drastically, and that is why Glasgow was able to put their hand up, because they got support from Commonwealth Sport to host it, £100 million. And the format has changed. It doesn't need to be in one city. It doesn't need to be, the number of sports can change and decrease, as has happened in Glasgow. So these are all new avenues that we can approach in order to make sure that we can host these events.
On to football news now. Bafana head coach Hugo Bruce has named his final 23-man squad for next month's 2 international friendly matches against Tanzania in Limpopo and then Mozambique in a match that will be played in Pretoria. The Belgian said his highlight since being appointed to this position was the team's success at the 2024 Africa Cup of Nations tournament in the Ivory Coast, where Bafana won the bronze medal. So Bruce says he will use the 2 friendly matches to give youngsters an opportunity to show if they are ready to make the step up into the senior national team, with an eye, of course, on the future, as most of the regulars in the squad are nearing retirement age.
It's a very good opportunity now. It's not really a game qualify for World Cup or qualify for AFCON. If you lose that game, it's a disaster. So now, if we lose even those 2 games, we will not be happy because we want to win it. But what's the problem? So they have the opportunity to play. And there are guys from 19, from 20 years old. Maybe they are not ready, but that we will see in those games. And therefore, those games are so good for them that they can show it without pressure.
Meanwhile, none of the Mamelodi Sundowns players have been included because the team will participate in the FIFA Club World Cup in the USA from the 14th of June. Now, Bruce says Tanzania as well as Mozambique will provide sufficient opposition. He didn't also want to play a stronger team such as Morocco because his regulars are not available.
Playing against top teams, you have to do it with your best team. And not with, like now, all the players of Sundowns are not there. You have a lot of young players in. We had a call from Morocco to play against Morocco. Immediately I said no, because I don't want to have a game like France. And nobody understands if you play against Morocco and you have a big defeat. Everybody is angry.
On to tennis news now. World number 1 Italy's Yannick Sinner advanced to the 3rd round of the French Open tennis tournament at Roland Garros in Paris on Thursday. Sinner defeated Frenchman Richard Gasquet in straight sets, effectively bringing the curtain down on his 23-year career. So the reigning Australian Open champion sealed a 6-3, 6-love and a 6-4 victory after just 2 hours on court. Now, 3rd seed Alexander Zverev, meanwhile of Germany, also advanced to the 3rd round. Zverev, last year's runner-up at Roland Garros, battled back from a set down against the world number 88 Jasper de Jong of the Netherlands. The score of that game was 3-6, 6-1, 6-2 and 6-3. And finally, Red Bull's Max Verstappen says his championship battle against the McLaren drivers this year doesn't really feel like a fight. The 4-time champion is 25 points behind the championship leader Oscar Piastri after winning 2 of the first 7 races. Now, this is the same number of victories as Lando Norris, Piastri's McLaren teammate, who is 3 points behind the Australian. But Verstappen implied that he did not have much hope of adding a 5th title in 2025. Verstappen's pessimism is also based on the fact that while the Red Bull is quick on circuits with medium as well as high-speed corners, such as the Barcelona track that hosts this weekend's Spanish Grand Prix, it is also weak at low speed and over bumps and curbs on streets circuit. Piastri, meanwhile, who has 4 wins, rejected the idea that Verstappen was not a title contender for this season. And that's a wrap from the sports desk at the Sawa. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, our email address is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. It's 12:36 p.m. Central African Time for Channel Africa Sport. I am Musibu Di Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Africa at Play with NATO and NETO chairman.
The Confederation of African Athletics, CAA President Mr. Hamad Kalkaba Malboum, talk to us about the state of athletics in Africa as it stands, and what picture are you looking at 5 years later?
Yeah, athletics in Africa is strong. We are able to organize our major events in time. Like this year, we will have the under-20 and under-18 African Championship in Nigeria. Next year, we will have the senior in Ghana. In 2027, we will go back to Algeria to organize the under 18 and under 20. And then 2028, we will have the senior championship in Gaborone in Botswana. Well, by this program, we can increase our performance. And at the same time, we are considering the fact that within the British Federation, they are identifying young talent every year within the national program, within the scholarship championship. And so the athletics in Africa is in good standard.
Live every Saturday and Sunday from 2 to 5 p.m. Central African Time.
Well, thank you to Msibudi Makura with our sports update. And we say good afternoon to Buntle Headbush with our business news.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Good afternoon. In our first look at the business news this afternoon, Kenya's inflation fell to 3.8% year-on-year in May from 4.1% a month earlier. In a statement, the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics says in month-on-month terms, inflation was 0.5% in May from 0.3% a month earlier. The office says the food and non-alcoholic beverages index is up 6.3% compared with May 2024, while the transport index rose 2.3% over the same period. Kenya's inflation remains well within the central bank's target of 2.5% to 7.5% range. Ugandan Finance Minister Matia Kasajia says the country is planning to borrow a total of $568 million from 3 lenders, including Afrexim Bank, to finance infrastructure development. Lawmakers approved the government request to acquire the loans despite resistance from opposition lawmakers who have criticized the country's growing debt burden. Kasaija told Parliament that at least $305 million will be borrowed from Cairo-based African Export-Import Bank, Afrexim Bank, while $260 million will be jointly lent by Ecobank Uganda and Development Bank of Southern Africa. The Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa, PRASA, says over $167 million has been spent to resuscitate the Cape Town Central Rail infrastructure. Transport Minister Barbara Creecy and PRASA officially launched the Cape Town Central Rail line, which was vandalized during the COVID-19 lockdown. The refurbishing has been delayed by people who erected shacks on the rail tracks, among other things. PRASA CEO Hisham Emran.
This is a critical milestone indeed. We were very happy to have the Minister of Transport come and relaunch the Central Line corridor. The Central Line being the Khayelitsha to Cape Town, as well as the Mitchells Plain Line, as well as Bellville-Sarepta, forms the core of the Cape Town network, responsible for over 40% of commuter journeys.
The Japanese government says China has agreed on procedures to resume import of Japanese seafood products, marking a step towards ending a nearly 2-year-long trade ban. Both governments have sought to end restrictions that followed Japan's decision to release into the sea treated wastewater from its crippled nuclear power plant at Fukushima. The BBC's Katie Silva has the details.
China was a hugely important destination for Japan's seafood exports prior to this ban. Now, officials from Tokyo saying that Japan's Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries, as well as China's customs unit, reached an agreement during a meeting in Beijing earlier this week. It's understood they're going to recommence exporting seafood to China after what they've called, quote, necessary procedures take place. It's unclear exactly what those procedures are.
Core inflation in Japan's capital hit a more than 2-year high on persistent rises in food costs, keeping the central bank under pressure to hike interest rates further. But factory output slid in April in a sign manufacturers are feeling the pinch from slowing global demand, highlighting the dilemma the Bank of Japan faces in balancing inflationary pressures and the hit to the economy from steep U.S. tariffs. The Tokyo Core Consumer Price Index rose 3.6% in May from a year earlier, exceeding the market forecast for a 3.5% gain and perking up from a 3.4% rise in April. Now, taking a look at our indicators this afternoon, $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 587. In Botswana, it's 13 pula 30. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 406, and in Zambia, it's 26 kwacha 62. Moving on to the BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 67. Russia, 78 rubles 61. In India, 85 rupees 43, China 7 yuan 19, and South Africa $1 is trading at 17 rand 86 cents. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 88 to the euro. Looking at the commodities, gold is trading at $3,297 and platinum at $1,071 per ounce, while Brent crude oil is at $64.54 a barrel. And those are your business news at this hour. For any business news stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Bundle Headbush.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802. Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo. 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
It is 12:43 Central African Time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. Join us in conversation on our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram, and subscribe on YouTube at Channel Africa 1. On Facebook at Channel Africa, you can also send us your comments and voice notes to +2763. That's 406-9126. Hashtag Africa Updates, and let us know which country you're in. And if you have any stories that you'd like us to highlight or to focus on, send us an email. It is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or give us a call on +2711 714 4459.
Africa Update on Channel Africa.
The UN Secretary General has laid a wreath in honor of fallen United Nations peacekeepers who perished while serving as blue helmets since 1948, including 57 military, police and civilian peacekeepers who perished while serving under the UN flag last year. Among them, Major Johan Christian Peters, who died when a hand grenade exploded near his sleeping quarters at a MONUSCO base in the Democratic Republic of Congo in July last year. The UN annually observed the International Day of UN Peacekeepers on May the 29th, paying tribute to the more than 2 million peacekeepers who have served in 71 operations around the world over 77 years, including the over 4,400 who paid the ultimate price. Sharon Bryce Peace has more.
A somber moment at UN headquarters, to the bugle sounds of the last post. The UN Secretary General laying a wreath to the fallen peacekeepers. Later, a moment of silence at a ceremony to mark the occasion. Currently, more than 68,000 women and men serve in peacekeeping missions in 11 conflict zones across Africa, Asia, Europe, and the Middle East, while 119 countries currently contribute uniformed personnel. Listen to SG Antonio Guterres.
We all paid tribute to those brave women and men who died far from home and far from their loved ones while serving humanity's most noble cause, peace. Today, we honor with the Dag Hammarskjöld Medal 57 peacekeepers who paid the ultimate price for the cause of peace last year, as well as another who's lost his life in 1973. We hold them all in our hearts, and we grieve with their families and loved ones. Their service and sacrifice will never be forgotten.
This year's theme for the day, The Future of Peacekeeping, includes a commitment to adapt peacekeeping to a changing world.
Les missions de maintien de la paix des Nations Unies sont confrontées à des situations complexes.
UN peacekeeping missions face complex situations in a complex world. Terrorism, crime that knows no borders, and misinformation, making them targets for attack. The Pact for the Future, adopted last year at the United Nations, includes a commitment to adapt peacekeeping to our changing world. The first step, a review of UN peace operations, is underway, and the United Nations will continue to work with member states and others to deliver. We owe it to the brave women and men who have served and died under our blue flag.
Views echoed by the head of UN Peace Operations, Under Secretary General Jean-Pierre Lacroix.
This is an important day for all the peacekeepers who are serving in the field and also here at HQ. And it's an opportunity, obviously, to pay tribute to the fallen peacekeepers, more than 4,400 since peacekeeping was created, and just for last year, 58 peacekeepers who gave their life serving peace. And when you look at the names of the fallen, obviously we're reminded how challenging peacekeeping is, how difficult and dangerous the environment in which peacekeeping operates are. And of course, we're also reminded that this is a very vital international partnership.
Republic of South Africa, Major Christian Johan Pieterse.
The UN chief also handing out the Dag Hammarskjöld medals to the ambassadors representing the countries of the fallen peacekeepers, including to Pretoria's Deputy Permanent Representative Martinus van Schalkwyk on behalf of Major Johan Christian Pieterse. The Secretary-General also presented awards to the 2024 Military Gender Advocate of the Year, Squadron Leader Sharon Winsote Saime from Ghana, and the UN Women Police Officer of the Year to Superintendent Zainab Gabla of Sierra Leone. Both of them serve with the United Nations Interim Security Force in Abyei, a disputed region straddling Sudan and South Sudan. I'm Sherwin Bryce-Pease in New York.
Africa Update on Channel Africa with Lulu Gaboo.
Protesters in Ghana have accused the country's president of violating the constitution and interfering in the independence of the judiciary. Eric Mawena Egbeta, the opposition protesters calling for the reinstatement of Tokonu.
The presidency and the president, on all of its spokespersons around the seat of government, have had one narrative and one narrative only, that no constitutional breaches have occurred in the process up until now, which has resulted in the suspension of the Chief Justice. In fact, it does appear the government has already communicated to these protesters that we're not interested in having the Chief Justice return and fill her position until the determination of the matter. We believe that she must remain suspended for the investigations to take place, after which the final determination will inform whether or not she returns.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time. Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo on Channel Africa.
It is 12:50 Central African Time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. Our Sudanese authorities on Thursday announced a surge in cholera cases in Khartoum State, with an increase in the number of registered cholera cases by over 1,300 infections recorded on Wednesday. Now, the number of deaths decreased due to medical interventions, and so far, more than 7,700 cholera cases, including over 1,000 cases in children under the age of 5 and 185 associated deaths have been reported in Khartoum State since January 2025. Now, the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, and partners are working with the Federal Ministry of Health to curb the spread of the deadly disease and save lives. Now, earlier this week, Africa World Hour's Tshepiso Makwetla spoke to Eva Hines, UNICEF's Sudan's Chief of Advocacy and Communication, who is on the front lines of efforts to address the escalating situation.
Well, if we look at Khartoum State alone, the cases are
spreading very, very rapidly. We've seen in the past 10 days only a 9-fold increase in the caseload, so it's quite drastic. And this is just a very small snapshot of what's happening.
And is it located in Khartoum and the surrounds, or is it also geographically spreading rapidly?
Well, this is part of the broader cholera outbreak that was officially declared already last year. So the caseload countrywide is a lot larger, and we are seeing cholera cases in many states across Sudan. And this is just the most recent one that we are working to respond to at the moment. But of course, this is a disease, and diseases don't respect specific geographic locations, but they tend to spread like wildfire in case we don't take action and try to stop them in their tracks.
And given the fact that you are working in a conflict area, which not only in some cases has very rural infrastructure, but in some cases has no infrastructure because it's been destroyed in the conflict.
Yes, absolutely, and it's making things a lot harder. That if we look at the health infrastructure here, around 70% of the different hospitals and health centers have been destroyed or damaged during the conflict. So it means that there are a lot less services available. There's a lot less health care professionals that are available. The vaccination rates have plummeted since the beginning of the conflict from around 84% to 30% in some places where the fighting is active. It is difficult to get supplies and vaccines through to these areas that are in and around the conflict zones. So it's very difficult in many ways. And of course, the conflict, unfortunately, also at times tends to make things harder and tend to also give room for these disease outbreaks.
And just looking at the figures, I did mention in the opening that you're reporting something in the region of close on 8,000 cases, and about 1,000 of these are children. But just looking at the total number of cases, given the fact that from the statistics that we've seen, not only from the UN, but aid agencies like UNICEF, what you have said is that the conflict itself has affected mostly women and children, and especially young girls of reproductive health as well. So just give us a lay of the land of the breakdown of the figures.
Well, this is, as you mentioned, this is a country at war, a war that's been continuing for more than 2 years now. And it has meant that millions of people, millions of children have been forced to flee from their homes, leaving everything behind, their homes, many times their loved ones. And they've been forced to then stay in displacement sites. In these sites, services are very scarce, so there's barely any healthcare available, any clean water, very poor sanitation in many places, and this all means that these places often are a breeding ground for diseases, and diseases often stalk the most vulnerable. That means young children, it means women, so then they often tend to fall sick.
And as you say that this is a continuation of an existing outbreak, so I'd imagine that this means for at least a long spells or periods of time, a lot of these areas, I believe 5 provinces so far within Khartoum have been affected. That means resources like clean drinking water are unavailable, including food for to prevent malnutrition.
Yes, absolutely. And also the thing that's making things harder at the moment in Khartoum state, or why we are seeing such a strong surge in these cases, it links to the fact that the power plants in the state have been attacked. And that has disrupted the electricity supply. And when there's no electricity, then it's very difficult for the water plants to provide water. And there's been big shortages in water in many places, and that then means that in in overcrowded neighborhoods or displacement sites where it's already very difficult to find safe and clean water. So many people are then resorting to dirty water, contaminated water, because it's the only thing they have available. And besides having no water, many of these places lack other services as well. And in this state, we've also seen areas that have become recently they've recently been opened up, and we've been able to access them. So we also see children who are suffering from severe acute malnutrition, and this means that as there has been very limited aid deliveries for months, so this is now the end result. When you have a child or many children who are suffering from malnutrition there.
Good afternoon to the Upside team. This is Nis Nompumelelo Ngubeni. How are you today?
Yeah, soon to be Mrs.
Soon to be Mrs. Yay, we're putting it out there. So what's coming up today?
Lulu, we are going to be looking at the business of the arts. Okay, so we'll be speaking to Afri Masterclass, who run masterclasses, and that is coming up in June on the 26th. All right, so we're also going to be essentially what it is. Maybe let me just give you a proper explanation. It's a company that gives these masterclasses on creative arts business. Okay. And they dedicated to helping individuals in the creative industry to develop their business skills and achieve success in their careers. So, you and me could benefit from such a masterclass. Because oftentimes I think we see ourselves as just talent for a period, but not as ourselves as businesses that can outlive a time in radio, a time in television, and. Yeah. And then we're going to be speaking to a trailblazer in the Mapiano space, and that is Master J Ta. Master J Ta released an album on the 16th of May. One of the songs from that album, Unkulunkulu, has been doing really well on the airwaves. So we'll find out about, how the album is doing, where he's performing, who he collaborated with, and some of the plans for the future. Obviously, as usual, lots of music. We have a DJ mix in the second hour of the show. I'll tell you what caught my eye. Unfortunately, my partner is not in today.
You're flying solo.
I am flying solo. He'll be back with me on Monday.
All right, so that's the Upside coming up at the top of the hour with Nompumelelo Ngubeni. For myself, Lulu Gaboo, and the Africa Update team, it's been a good Friday, great week. Continue with us on our socials. Let us know what your thoughts, and send us voice notes and messages on +276 406 9126. Have a great weekend. Let's do this again on Monday. Bye-bye.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
The latest news this hour. Some opposition lawmakers in Ghana boycotted Parliament yesterday, protesting against the detention of a senior leader facing an investigation into financial irregularities. New Patriotic Party chairperson in the party's political stronghold of Ashanti region, Bernard Antwi, has been in custody at the respondent in Ghana. Eric Mawena Egbeta explains.